Christian, can you do it? Can you do the stream? No, no. Ah, for later. Sorry. Okay. Starting the webinar now. Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you. A very warm welcome to all of you. An early good morning to those of you that are joining us this morning from Europe, and good afternoon to everyone joining us from ASEAN. My name is Susanne Renzo-Vaso, and I'm here with my wonderful colleague, Dr. Jenny Lind El-Mako. We are the Euraccess worldwide team here in Southeast Asia, and we are committed to building bridges between the communities of researchers, innovators, and scientists between Europe and ASEAN. And the event that you're joining at the moment, the European Research and Innovation Days in ASEAN, is our flagship event. It's a dialogue forum where we're coming together to exchange ideas and to find solutions to some of the challenges that the world is facing today. This is, in fact, the 7th year in a row that we're running this event, and we're very grateful for you to joining us again. This year, we're looking at the twin transition, digital and green. Apologies, someone is ringing my doorbell, just ignore it. And in this session today, we're looking at some of the innovative ideas that are coming out of Europe to find solutions to those challenges. We have 45 minutes ahead of us, and in this session, we're looking at a very important aspect, which is important for researchers and innovators. It's also about funding. The European Green Deal is the Commission's policy goals that they've set itself to be completely carbon neutral by 2050. This is an enormously ambitious goal, and of course it requires innovative research to find solutions to actually turn these policy goals into a reality, and European funding plays an important role there. We're listening first to our first speaker today, Marlene Baerts, and she is from the European Commission. She's a policy officer with the Directorate General for Education, Culture, Youth and Sports. She is talking to us about the Marie Skłodowska Curie Actions, the MSCA, and the important role it plays in funding innovative solutions, innovative research that contribute to the Green Deal goals. Thereafter, and I think this is particularly interesting to those of you joining us today, we'll be listening to two speakers that are presenting their research projects to us. We are joined from Ireland by Dr. Sarah McCormick. She's Associate Professor at Trinity College Dublin in the Department of Civil, Structural and Environmental Engineering. She's also the lead PI in the Solar Energy Applications Group. She's been working in the areas of sustainable energy, specifically solar energy and thermal energy storage, for over 15 years, and she has the incredible publication record of 150 publications. She has been awarded funding of over 4.5 million in national and EU funded projects, such as the ERC Starter Grant. And she's in fact talking to us about the ERC funded project PEDAL in her presentation later today. Thereafter, our third speaker is Dr. Charles Silver. He's currently team leader of the LASER project, and that stands for Leveraging ASEAN Capacities for Emergency Response. Now, he's talking about a project where we already have concrete collaboration between the EU and ASEAN. He has 18 years of experience working in emergency response and disaster risk management across diverse technical sectors and engaging with a wide variety of humanitarian, development, and civil protection actors. He works as team leader of the LASER project on behalf of the Swedish Civil Contingencies Agency called MSB. And this is a project, a capacity development initiative together with the ASEAN Coordinating Center for Humanitarian Assistance on Disaster Management and national disaster management agencies in Southeast Asia. He has also worked all across the globe. There's lots of countries that he's been based in and worked in, and we're very much all looking forward to the presentations. Now, without much further ado, I would suggest we invite Marlene to now share with us information about the MSCA and the role it plays in finding actual concrete solutions to the Green Deal policy goals. Marlene, please.
Many thanks and good morning from Brussels. So I work for the European Commission and more specifically on the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions, but I'll try very briefly to tell you a little bit about what we're doing at EU level to try and be greener or to green our research. So just here to briefly set the scene for those of you who are maybe not so familiar with the European Green Deal. I mean, Susanne mentioned it earlier. This is our new, not so new actually, a growth strategy, which has a very ambitious goal to become climate neutral, for Europe to become climate neutral by 2050. There are a lot of different initiatives now going on to try and implement this growth strategy, which in the end, I mean, the purpose here is to really push for sustainable growth and also show that growth and carbon emissions are not contradictory, but rather the opposite, that they are an opportunity for new jobs, new businesses, for people to develop new skills and competences, notably scientists, etc. And obviously, now more looking at research and education, we have a big role, or education and research have a big role to play to try and achieve the goals of the Green Deal through, I mean, schools, universities, research centers, etc., and their interaction with pupils, parents, researchers, and the wider community. So we published a set of what we call European Commission or Commission communications on how to achieve or how to support the European Green Deal and the digital and green transitions. So this is just a little bit the more political framework. Now, obviously, this all also costs money, and if we look now more specifically at the research and innovation, we have the so-called Horizon Europe program. This is our 7-year framework program in Europe to fund research and innovation. You can see at the bottom here the total budget for the 7 years, so until 2027, which is 95.5 billion euros. So I think it's actually the biggest research and innovation funding program worldwide. And here you can see as well that more or less 1/3 of this budget is dedicated or has to be dedicated to climate, to reaching climate targets. If we look now more specifically at the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions, you can actually see they're part of the first pillar, which is called Excellent Science, together with the European Research Council and research infrastructures. So we have a small share of the budget, which is not that small. I mean, it's 6.6 billion euros, also for 7 years. Now, if you are not familiar with the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions, I mean, in a nutshell, we are a program to train excellent researchers and set up networks, research networks. So when we're speaking of researchers, it's all career stages, so from PhD candidates to postdoctoral fellows. Just to give you an idea of the numbers we're speaking here and also the impact that the program can have by you know, showcasing best practice in greening itself. We've funded around 65,000 researchers since 2014. So that was in the previous funding period. Some of them were Nobel Prize winners. So really to show that we are part of the excellence pillar, and actually the most important criteria when selecting projects, successful projects, is really excellence. We're very international. I think that's important, especially when we're speaking of greening and sustainability, because we are de facto also a mobility program. So we encourage, or we ask our program participants to be mobile between countries, because we have a very big international coverage. Actually, 37% of our researchers are from outside the EU. And yeah, you can see it's not only about, I mean, it's research, but bringing together the academic and the non-academic sector. So we also involve a lot of non-academic organizations, including SMEs. So this is just to give you very briefly an idea of what the MSCA is. We have 5 actions. I've put the link to our website in the slide if you want to find out more, as this is not really the focus, but so you know that we basically fund doctoral networks or individual postdoctoral fellowships. We also support the exchange, short-term exchange of staff across institutions and borders. Now, looking more specifically at greening and the Green Deal, what we have done is that with the help of our alumni back in 2020, we have asked them some questions through a survey whether or not they were aware of the European Green Deal, and if their institution was implementing any green policy, or if they were implementing measures to reduce the environmental impact of their projects. And you can see here the replies, and we had over 1,500 respondents, so quite a good reply rate. And you can see that actually half of them were not aware of the European Green Deal. Now, this was in 2020, so the Green Deal was still relatively new. I suppose that if we ran the same survey nowadays, the results would be slightly different, but still this made us realize that maybe we had a role to play and try to be more proactive in promoting the Green Deal towards our funding recipients. For those of them who said that they had measures in place to reduce the environmental impact of their projects, these are some of the replies they gave. So how to reduce the impact of their research projects, for example, by recycling and reducing waste, by using digital tools as complement to physical mobility, using more sustainable transportation means, no single-use plastics, sharing equipment between labs, etc., etc. On the reply for the reasons why they did not implement anything to make the research greener, here close to 700 replies, the majority said that it is because of lack of knowledge and information, or because they did not have any hierarchical support or institutional support, and then obviously also lack of financial support or other incentives. And the question, what can the MSCA, so proposals to make our program, our funding program, greener in the future, they came up with a range of proposals. For example, it's to publish more guidance material, to do more communication, more digital tools and incentives, etc., etc. So this got us thinking, and this is basically, in a nutshell, how we are now trying to address the Green Deal. So as we are what we call a bottom-up program, meaning that it is the researchers and the applying institutions that decide which topic they want to collaborate on. So it's open to any discipline. Obviously, we do fund a wide range of excellent projects on different topics, including, for instance, climate change or biodiversity, oceans, healthy soils, etc. So what we're trying to do is to disseminate these excellent projects through either our MSCA newsletter, which has thousands of followers on social media. We have what we call the Cordis platform, and this is also useful for you if you're interested to know what type of projects we're funding. You can just Google it and then look for topics or projects that have been funded on ocean restoration or climate adaptation, etc. We're also having what we call thematic cluster events. So we're bringing together excellent projects on a given topic, together with policymakers at EU level, to try and exchange and feed research results into our EU policymaking. So we've had a range of these, for instance, on, focusing specifically on the Green Deal, but we also had one dedicated to oceans and healthy oceans and waters. So this is basically what we're trying to do with the content of our projects, to disseminate it to interested stakeholders. And then there's the second thing, that is the implementation. So to make our projects greener. And what we have done here is that we have published an MSCA Green Charter for all our beneficiaries and participants. And so they are encouraged to implement this Green Charter. And at the end of their project, so after usually 4 years, they have to report on what they have done or have not done to make their project greener. This is just to show you what it looks like and where it is. So you can find it online. I mean, it is called an MSCA Green Charter, but actually it is open to anyone who is interested in having a greener practices or a sort of sustainability strategy in place. Here, just an extract of some of the principles that we have listed in that Green Charter that we came up with together with environmental experts in higher education. So you will see that we have quite general, straightforward recommendations for researchers on the one hand, but then also for institutions that implement the research. So you can see a little bit, I mean, they're quite straightforward principles, such as, prioritizing low carbon forms of transportation, using more teleconferencing tools, etc., etc. So, I mean, even if you are not an MSCA researcher, you could have a look and maybe get inspired by this charter. And then obviously, to make it easier for people to actually be greener, we have published a set of guidance material, so to kind of inspire people who don't know where to start with on how to organize sustainable events, how to pick sustainable hotels, green public procurement, etc., etc. So here again, it's all available on our website, and I would encourage you to have a look if you're interested in being greener yourself. And with this, I stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marlene. And maybe just to recap, the MSCA really offers funding opportunities for researchers from anywhere in the world and working on all types of topics. So the social sciences are as included as the so-called hard sciences. And Marlene has given us a fabulous overview. There are funding opportunities that are coming up next year. I think the next call for the postdoctoral fellowships will open in May. So if anyone is interested in a 2-year research project anywhere in Europe, you should already mark May in your calendar. And maybe Marlene, what about the current program, the Research and Innovation Staff Exchange? Maybe if you could just share just a few words about this opportunity to our listeners here.
Yes, yeah, indeed, because the call is actually open right now. So if you're interested in applying, you can do so. So the staff exchange action is one of the 5 actions. And as the name says, I mean, it's pretty straightforward as well. It's for the exchange of staff. So staff that is involved in R&I activities between your institution and any partner institution in the world. So it's very international. You have to have at least 2 in Europe, but then you could have any other institution participating from outside Europe, and you can send your staff and receive host staff for up to 12 months and receive, and the staff would receive a top up to his salary, and the institutions participating also receive some funding to cover the networking and training, etc. costs. So the call is open now. We can put maybe or share the link where to apply. Otherwise, all our calls are published on the so-called Funding and Tenders Opportunity Portal, FTOP. I mean, if you type FTOP in Google and then in there you type MSCA, you will see all the open and upcoming calls as well, and you apply directly through the portal.
Thank you so much, Marlene. So this, of course, another opportunity for your green ideas, for your research in that particular field to get funding from Europe and also to join forces with potential European collaborators. Jenny and I will post some information in the chat box here that you could pursue this. And Michelle, I've read your question here. We'll get back to your question at the end. Now, thank you, Marlene. I'd like to invite our next speaker, Sarah McCormick. She is funded not only by the MSCA, but also by the European Research Council grant, which funds frontier science in Europe. And Sarah has kindly agreed to share with us a little bit about the research projects that she is working on at the moment. Sarah, please.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you can see my screen okay. Yeah, okay, brilliant. So thank you so much for the invitation to come along today. I'm going to tell you about some of the research that I'm working on. It's European funding global innovative sustainable energy solutions. So while it's funded in Europe and with collaborators, the solutions that we've come up with are global solutions. And this is where it's huge importance for then development further and collaboration, more broadly throughout the world to apply these solutions more generally. So the first project I'm going to talk to you about today is the ERC funded project. And what that's doing is it's using cloudy skies to generate electricity. So I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Ireland, but we are not so famous for our sunny skies. We have a lot of cloud cover here. And so trying to maximize the amount of energy that we can actually extract from the light is really important for us here. And so this project was looking at how we can do that using luminescent solar devices. So while it's focused a little bit on that sort of cloudy Irish skies, it's really applicable to anywhere that you do have cloudy skies. So for any of you in terms of solar, the Earth receives more energy from the sun in 1 hour than the world uses in a year. So the potential here is phenomenal. But of course, the problem is that we're trying to use that and extract that in an efficient way, cost-effective way. And often we think of large-scale solar in terms of, when we think about concentration, we're thinking about very bright skies with direct sunlight, using these sort of large solar concentration towers to generate very high amounts of electricity. Whereas, of course, that's not possible globally to be able to do that. And unfortunately, in an Irish context, it's not at all. So whenever we look at that from a resource perspective, it's really trying to see how we can maximize the resource that we do have. And really that's the way that we do that is using luminescent devices. And the way that they work is that instead of collecting light from a particular angle where we have direct sunlight, these luminescent devices collect light from many different directions. I'm not sure if you can see that there where the edge is brighter. And so that the idea behind these types of devices is that the light is collected into the device and it's trapped within there, and the light only emerges out at the edges. And that's where you see this brightness at the edge of these devices. And what we do then is we put solar cells on the edges and we collect light. So what we would do then is we would have devices that would look something like a window possibly, where the frame would have the solar cells, and then that glazed area would be our collection surface where we're actually collecting the light. So it's collecting light from all directions, and that's where it really works very well from a diffuse perspective. What we use then, of course, is in terms of materials, is trying to enhance that and improve that. So we look at fluorescent dyes, we look at quantum dots, and that's the image there showing that different sizes of quantum dots absorb different parts of the solar spectrum. So we're trying to tune that. And as part of the ERC funding, the work that we are doing is looking at plasmonic enhancement of the emission of these materials. So trying to see how we can further enhance the amount of light that we're getting out of the edges. And essentially, this is the way the luminescent solar concentrator works. And in the pedal project, we were looking at the concentrator, but we were also looking at downshifting layers. And essentially what they are, it's a purely optical approach where we're putting a layer in front of a solar cell. And what it's doing is it's trying to actually collect the UV light. So in most cases, UV light can be quite, it can be quite destructive. So it's generally blocked from these types of cells. So in our pedal project, what we're doing is using luminescent materials to collect that UV light to then further enhance the efficiencies within the spectrum of the solar cells itself. So in some of these devices, we have some losses, and reabsorption, scattering, and all of that. And so what we are doing in the ERC project is we're using this plasmonic interaction. And how we're doing that is using metal nanoparticles. And so these metal nanoparticles are using this surface plasmon resonance. And I won't get into the details of that, but essentially what it's trying to do is really make our luminescent materials within these devices much brighter, so that we're able to enhance the collection efficiency over all of these devices. So this is just giving you a very small scale of what we were doing in the lab, and the enhancement that we could see. So we're getting really great results here, and that was what was really encouraging in our ERC project. So this is our luminescent solar concentrator, and then again for our luminescent downshifting layer. So you can see that sort of yellow color on top of the cell, and that's our luminescent layer there. And the enhancement there was really quite high whenever we were using non-silicon type devices, which is really important as we're trying to diversify in terms of our solar industry. So in that project, we developed a model which now we can use to design larger scale devices. And the idea for the project was really that we would develop building scale devices. So it's not just in the lab, it's actually practical applications at the end. So this allowed us to do that. We did some testing showing our nice, in terms of the diffuse collection, how we're getting an enhancement of around 12 when we compare that to our reference photovoltaic cell. So we're very happy about that. And now what we're working on is these types of building facade components. So where you see a colored facade, whether that's a colored glazing or a solid color on a building, you can think of more luminescent devices in that using the luminescent devices, you still get the color, but now you'll be able to collect that electricity from the panels itself. So that's what we're working on at the moment, is trying to get that fabrication process up and starting to look and work for collaborators to do that. So maybe if there's anyone interested today, you can get in touch with me about that. And then just very briefly then as well to talk to you about the IDEAS project. So this was a Horizon 2020 project, and that's integrating multiple renewable energy technologies in buildings. So often in renewable energies, you might have, particularly in buildings, you would have separate systems for different technologies. And the idea around this project was trying to get these different systems to actually talk together and to communicate so that you were optimizing their use. And so that's really important. So you're getting the best use of those technologies depending on where you are in the world. So you have different resources, but also different times of the day. And it also looks at your demand in the building itself and trying to predict that demand with the weather patterns as well. So this is a 14-partner project. It's looking at many different components. So we're involved in the solar side of that, looking at reflective collectors as well as luminescent devices in the solar side. And this is a type of geometry that we have at the moment. This is some modeling, and then of course the installation. So we have this in the west coast of Ireland, and we have another demonstrator in Italy, in Ferrara. So these are specially designed depending on the location of the building to capture the maximum amount of diffuse light. So these reflectors are designed to do that. So this would be something, and the idea of the project is that it's very much adaptable. So it has to be depending on where you are. So you would have sort of a bespoke solution for particular climates and countries. So this is trying to maximize the amount of light and heat that you can get out of the air and out of the ground as well. So this is the solar component. And then whenever we moved on, we had a thermal energy storage part. So in this case, we were digging up a floor essentially and putting in a phase change material into the floor. And that material was absorbing the heat and storing that and then releasing it later on in the day, trying to save our heating bills, I suppose. So it was basically a material underneath or underfloor heating there. And that helped to reduce the amount of energy that was needed within the building. So we had to do we were working with companies to try to develop that solution and implement that in this demo site here. And then we had the next one was the heat pump side of things. So whenever we looked at that, that was a vertical heat exchanger in the ground. And this was, again, the photos here are the one in the demo site in Mayo. We also had this implemented in a larger scale in Italy. So this is where you have these vertical heat exchangers, which means that you need much less ground to be able to install these, because often we have large horizontal pipe networks in the ground, which means that it's not so useful in maybe a city setting or where you have a built up area. So this allows a different type of installation here. And here, just the aftermath of that. So you can see it didn't take long for the grass to come back, and you wouldn't even know it's there at the moment. The other demo site was in Ferrara, and here is the snack bar, and that floor has also got that thermal energy storage material in it, and then those vertical heat exchangers out in the ground. I won't go into the detail of that plant because it's quite complex and much bigger, but it's really exciting that we were able to do that, and within the university complex there. So the part of the project that was really unique then was this idea of the control aspects and the demo sites. So trying to see how we could actually get all of these technologies to talk to each other and then to implement those in the demo site. So this was the real important overall aspect. And then, of course, after that, we were looking at the dissemination, the social engagement, which formed a really important role in this Horizon 2020 funding, was engaging with the community and ensuring that they were, interested and involved in what we were doing as a project overall. And of course, then the exploitation phase. So this is where we're at the moment. So it's really key that it's a really interesting timing that I was invited to come along here today. So this is where, we have to go out to other stakeholders in other countries and other places and try to see now how we can work towards building this into an actual solution that's implementable in a broader scale, in a more global scale too. So as I said, this is the type of control system that we're looking at, and I won't go into any more detail on that, but just to give you an idea in terms of the partners that we have involved in that. So we have companies, we have universities, we have research institutions, and then of course we have community groups as well. So it's a really broad mix, but I think it's really critical that we have all of those stakeholders involved in the project, which helps us to develop it for up until this stage. And of course now continuing, we have huge opportunities then for collaboration. And I suppose it's really great to be in this type of forum to be able to open that up for ideas around collaboration and maybe the opportunities for looking at different climates and different countries to see how we can come up with other bespoke solutions as well. So thank you very much. If anyone has any questions on that.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was Sarah McCormick from Trinity College in Dublin presenting to us these really interesting projects, which are, of course, directly applicable to the situation here. Solar energy and energy efficiency in buildings is also at the top of the research agenda in many countries here in Southeast Asia. And I am certain that we will find and that we will receive inquiries from potential collaborators, perhaps in this session, if anyone has a question right now, but definitely in the following week. So as Sarah has already said, there are direct opportunities for collaboration with partners here. Thank you so much for this for now, Sarah. And we will now invite our third speaker. Our third speaker today is Dr. Charles Silva, and he is going to introduce to us the LASER project, leveraging ASEAN capacities for emergency response. Charles, the floor is yours.
So, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello from Jakarta. Selamat siang. So my topic today is the EU-ASEAN collaboration in developing digital tools for disaster management, which is happening within the sponsorship of the EU-funded LASER project. So what I thought, we'll talk a little bit about the whys of this collaboration first, and then look at some of the actual mechanisms for how the collaboration is happening. Can you see the slides? Yeah, I hope. Good.
Perfect, yes.
Okay, so we'll jump right into the whys. Why bother with digital cooperation in this area? Well, unfortunately, the EU and ASEAN share a common future, which is sadly one with a worsening risk situation. Both regions face a wide spectrum of natural hazards, which is being made worse by the deterioration of our natural habitat through things like climate change, which is both intensifying disasters and also making them occur more often. We've seen this like in Europe with record temperatures the past 2 years. Large parts of the continent have been affected by extensive heat waves and drought, and also these devastating wildfires, which are connected to both heat waves and droughts. But even the year before, we saw quite exceptional flooding in the heart of Europe. And what you see is like this pattern of extreme weather, which in terms of cost, I mean, it's like created damages which exceeded $50 billion alone last year for Europe. And then Southeast Asia is actually in a more precarious risk situation than that. It's already the most disaster affected region on the planet. And looking over the past 50 years, nearly 500,000 people have lost their lives in Southeast Asia from natural hazards, while another 500 million have been impacted by them. So the numbers here are huge. If you look at like an individual country like the Philippines, I mean, they on average have about 4.7 million people affected by disasters per year, where you have hundreds of thousands displaced by these extreme weather events, usually storms and floods that happen between, let's say, September and December. Looking into a crystal ball, there's a sort of pattern of convergence as well between the riskscape of the EU and the riskscape of ASEAN. This table from a UN ESCAP report shows that, like, for climate change effects on ASEAN countries, flooding and heat waves feature prominently in the future riskscape for a number of key countries. And we're in fact already seeing a similar pattern in Europe. Another why collaborate? Well, another good reason is that we have a lot to learn from each other about disasters. The national governments in Southeast Asia have vast experience in responding to flooding, tropical storms, earthquakes, and other hazards. And Europe likewise has a lot to share in terms of mutual learning, mainly from its Union Civil Protection Mechanism, which is like the EU plus a number of partner countries. Through this, the EU and its partners have built up a well-developed system of emergency response, which includes both material assets, human resources, training systems, and rapidly deployable equipment, which is all certified and tested on a yearly basis. And I think also it's important to point out that the EU is quite keen on testing innovations. We've seen, like in the past summer, this pre-positioning of firefighting resources, for instance, in Greece, ahead of the summer fire season. This is a very innovative practice, and I think we're going to start seeing this in ASEAN and other countries as well, other regions. So those are the two main whys. If we go then and look at the hows of digital cooperation, then we come to the LASER project. And these are three areas where the LASER project is facilitating digital cooperation between the EU and ASEAN on the issue of disaster management. First, how these two regional bodies basically collect and use disaster data. Second, how these regional bodies communicate internally during emergencies, how they talk to their member states and other interested actors, especially those responding to disasters. And finally, third, how these regional bodies cooperate and share information on their processes of module development and certification. And I'll come back to what I mean by module development. So let's briefly look at these three areas. First thing, this is the area where digital sharing is most prolific between the EU and ASEAN. They've both invested quite heavily in advanced tools for monitoring and analysis of disaster data, and they also share quite heavily between already, with one another. ASEAN has this DMRS. Sorry about all these abbreviations. disaster monitoring and response system, and they also have a kind of storage system for data called ADINET. While the EU has developed, together with the UN, this global system, GDAX, which is the Global Disaster Alert and Coordinating System. And then you have other tools like that the EU uses, like EcoFlash and these daily maps. Now, these systems, like, they allow disasters to be tracked in real time, and they allow high quality data to be shared very, very quickly. So it's useful to responders. Here on this example, you see data on this devastating tropical cyclone called Nalgai, which hit the Philippines last week. And so this data here, it actually originated with Philippine government agencies. You can see them listed down there in the EcoFlash, like the NDRMC and DSWD. Also from the AHA Center, which is an ASEAN institution where I'm embedded myself in Jakarta. And then this information is shared through the GDAX system. And then the data received is of such high quality that it allows partners like DG ECHO to produce their own material on the developing disasters, such as you see on the other side of the map of which is produced by the ERCC, the Emergency Response Coordination Center in Brussels. And here, this map is tracking, like, on a daily basis, the damage caused by the storm across each region of the Philippines, which is very useful as you then go and respond and you need to develop priorities. So that's the first area. Then we have the second area. So these fancy looking rooms, these are basically like where they lead, the two regional bodies lead their disaster monitoring and coordination efforts. One is the AHA Center, where I'm embedded, and the other is the ERCC, based in Brussels. And so here you have two very similar entities that have built up similar systems. In the ASEAN case, it's called the WebEOC, and in the ERCC case, it's called CESIS, which stands for Common Emergency Communications and Information System. So these are both very refined digital communication systems to effectively communicate with their own member states and partners when they want to inform them about a disaster, or they want to submit, like, requests for help, or receive even offers of help in a confidential manner. So, like, this is a kind of digital communication system that allows them to talk to one another without using things like relying on, like, WhatsApp or, you know, the internet, email, this kinds of things. So it's a secure, basically a secure communication system. It's very important that we get these two regional bodies talking to one another, because they basically have parallel systems, and they can benefit a lot from, you know, sharing how these systems operate, what kind of information they store, because they store a lot of information on, like, emergency rosters, like qualified people that can be deployed to disasters, on standby assets, the material that can be sent, and also this process, as I said, of offering help and receiving help. I think, like in the EU case, the mechanism has had this system in place for much longer. So they have, and they also have a wider membership. It's the EU member states plus 6 others. So here, the second area is also quite critical. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about, this final area of digital cooperation, is about modules. So a module is a mobile operational team that's used to respond in a disaster. It includes both trained experts and the material they use as they're deployed. A good example is in this picture at the bottom, this fancy looking yellow Saab airplane, and the pilot, which can actually collect water in its underside and then drop it on fires. Now, this is part of the Swedish module on aerial firefighting capacity, which is registered with the Union Civil Protection Mechanism, and it can be quickly deployed to a place like Greece or Spain or France or wherever it's needed. You can see in this picture on the left, these are all of the modules which have been registered in the mechanism, in the EU Civil Protection Pool. And they're really quite substantial. I think it's hard to like assign a value to this, but like they cover so many different areas, like urban search and rescue, CBRN, forest fire fighting, mobile labs, and emergency medical teams. And when you really need these resources, they can be deployed quite quickly in under a day. So I think these are an invaluable resource. Now you may ask why I consider these digital resources. Well, I mean, most of the modules, they're available to the EU or respectively in ASEAN, like the shelter kits you can see in the other photo. But they're not physically held by the organization. They're effectively managed like in the member countries digitally. So you need an automated digital system to always show other member states whether they're available, where they are, and like keeping updated accounts of the material and the deployable people that go with them. These so-called rosters of staff, and also important information about the capacities of the people that are in the rosters. So it's very heavily reliant on digital technology and being like updated through these automated systems. So those are the three areas. I mean, due to time constraints, I'll have to stop here, but I do want to emphasize that this is just a brief overview of collaboration in this area, made to give you an idea of some part of like what we're working on, but we also have indeed other areas of digital collaboration. So I thank you for your time, and hope there's some questions and comments.
Thank you so much, Dr. Charles Silva, for this introduction to the LASER project, which indeed offers lots of potential for further collaboration. I'm just wondering, is there also, is it important also to get civil society included when it comes to emergency response? How close is the collaboration with the civil society sector in ASEAN?
Yeah, the cooperation with the civil society is very strong, and of course, civil society is a leading response actor. Like in the case of the Philippines, you can see like the PDRF. It's a Philippines NGO. I mean, they're one of the main responders like to disasters across the whole country, and this is the same with like the IFRC and a lot of other actors. These tools are quite useful because they have possibilities of cooperating with other actors that are included in them. Like, for instance, module registration. In the Union Civil Protection Mechanism, there are modules that are run by NGOs that are not run by the member states. Like the German organization Johanniter. They have a module for emergency medical teams, a rapidly deployable, it's kind of like field hospital. And that's run entirely by an NGO. So I think all of these tools very importantly include NGOs. They're inclusive, they're not exclusive to the member states. And this is a recognition of the key role that civil society plays in both monitoring and responding to disasters. I hope I've sort of answered your question.
Thank you so much, Charles. And the final question maybe for Sarah before we close, because we have to move over. Sarah, because we have PhDs and postdocs in the audience today, would there be opportunity for them to join you on one of these two projects?
Oh, for sure. And, you know, as these projects come to an end, there's always more research, you know, being developed and more projects being applied for. So there's always opportunities in terms of research. So if anyone's interested, please just get in touch. And if we don't have funding right at the moment, it's something that we can work together towards, and maybe looking at some of the funding Marlene mentioned, that would be a really great opportunity as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So with this, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but we will make the video available to all of us. Please look out for the Euraccess ASEAN emailer that's joining you or reaching your inbox in the next few days. And if you can, do also join us in 10 minutes at the next session, where you also meet another very inspiring researchers from the EU and from ASEAN. And thank you so much, Charles, Sarah, and Marlene, for sharing with us about the funding and the projects that are being funded. We will make sure to channel interested potential collaborators your way. So once again, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening this morning, this afternoon. Thank you. See you all soon.
Thank
Thank
you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Take care.